The scene jumps to Jackson talking to Encred about the sense of evasion. Jackson says evasion means to see with your eyes and dodge. As he holds up a rock, he continues saying that training the sense of evasion is about pushing your reaction speed to the extreme. But before that, he says, Encred needs dynamic vision. As Encred listens intently, Jackson tells him he will throw stones marked with letters, and Encred must read them and respond. He hurls a rock past Encred, but it flies by too quickly for Encred to even register what it was. As Encred looks at the fallen rock, confused, Jackson picks up another rock from his collection and says he will throw again, launching the next stone and asking what letter was written on it. Encred, still unable to keep up, fails to answer. This exercise continues into the night. Jackson throws another rock and urges Encred to focus and look closely. After the training session, Odin begins cracking Encred's back as Encred groans, struggling through the pain. After the torture sessions, Odin tells Encred he has improved significantly. His body should now be fine to move. Encred, drenched in sweat, asks if that's true. Suddenly, a rock whizzes past Encred's face. It's Jackson. Holding another stone in his hand, he asks Encred what letter was carved on the one he just threw. Encred, slightly irritated, glares at Jackson and questions whether he waited for a moment of vulnerability on purpose. Jackson remains unfazed, reminding Encred that mercy doesn't exist on the battlefield. The scene cuts to the outskirts of their base. Hidden in a bush, a suspicious figure crouches low, clutching a weapon. Their intent is clearly malicious. Back at training, another stone is launched at high speed. Encred's eyes glow as he locks onto it, tracking the motion with intense focus. He follows the stone until it hits the ground, his gaze never wavering. A smile creeps onto his face. He begins to speak, saying he saw, but before he can finish, chaos erupts. Soldiers sprint across the camp, weapons drawn, shouting about an ambush. Jackson and Encred turn toward the commotion as others yell that it's a surprise attack and call for everyone to gather. Jackson ignores the noise. He turns back to Encred and asks again what the letter was. Encred, stunned by Jackson's indifference, asks if he's seriously still focused on that. Then, with certainty, he says the letter carved on the stone was M-I, and asks if he got it right. Jackson closes his eyes and lets the remaining stones fall from his hand. After crafting 40 M-I stones, he says Encred has finally succeeded and praises him with a calm, well done. He adds that Encred will now be able to carve different letters. Encred, unsure, wonders if that was genuine praise or sarcasm. The shouting continues as soldiers yell about an ambush. Suddenly, someone charges toward the noise. It's Rem, axe in hand, face lit with excitement, demanding to know where the attackers are. Encred watches him and asks what's wrong with Rem, wondering if he's finally gone completely mad. Jackson replies that it's frustration. With Encred bedridden, Rem hasn't had a chance to duel using the might-heart technique or something. Even bullying the never-tried squad leader wasn't enough to satisfy him. We then see Andrew, beaten and lying on the ground, calling out for someone to come at him. His bodyguard kneels beside him with a worried expression, urging Andrew to pull himself together so they can move. Rem finally reaches the commotion with a wide grin while others stand around, stunned by what they're witnessing. Encred wonders why they're just gathering instead of fighting. Rem, clearly frustrated, demands to know where the enemy is, the giant, his toy. Andrew, bruised and dazed, asks what's going on. A nearby soldier explains that the enemy only fired arrows and then ran. Fallen soldiers lay scattered across the ground, arrows lodged deep in the backs of their heads. The soldier continues, saying the border guards will catch the archer, so there's nothing left for them to do. Rem stares into the distance and says the border guards alone won't be able to catch the archer. Encred looks at him, puzzled. Rem points ahead and tells him to examine the arrow. The shaft is longer, and the feathers stretch farther back than usual. It's from a special bow designed for extreme range. He's seen it before, the work of someone called Hawk's Claw. Encred crosses his arms and asks when Hawks ever had claws. Rem pauses, then wonders if it was Hawk's fang instead. Encred can't recall clearly, but doesn't think that's right either. Rem sighs and says, Encred's memory is terrible. Encred reflects that for Rem, it's only been months, but for him, trapped in the loop, it's been years. Rem asks if Encred remembers the time he got beaten by the frog and ended up in the infirmary. Back then, during that chaotic battle, the archer responsible for these long-range attacks was rampaging across the field. Hearing that, something clicks in Encred's head, and he starts to remember. He recalls a soldier named Bell, nearly killed by a long-range arrow. Encred had saved him at the last moment. The archer behind it all was known as Hawk's Claw. The scene jumps to the tent, where someone casually asks if there was a raid. It's Ragna. Encred, unimpressed, asks what he was doing all day to miss something like that. Then pauses. He already knows. Ragna slept so much his face is greasy. Ragna shifts the topic, saying what's more important is Encred's dual swords. He's been thinking about them. Encred needs to get his body more accustomed to wielding two blades. Encred asks if Ragna has some kind of method. Ragna says he'll explain it in a way that's easy to understand. With a serious expression, Ragna raises two fingers and says, from now on, Encred has two lovers. Rem, caught off guard, says if Encred's fiancé hears that, he's dead. Encred quickly refutes it, saying she's not his fiancé. Ragna continues his explanation, saying Encred needs to eat, sleep, fight, and do everything with two swords in his hands. Getting used to them first is what matters. We then see Esther staring at Encred with a perplexed look. She complains that she doesn't even have a proper place to sleep anymore. As she climbs on top of Encred, she mutters that he now trains until he's asleep and grumbles about how uncomfortable it is. Suddenly, someone yells ambush. Rem and Encred jolt out of bed. Encred gets up so fast that Esther is launched into the air. A soldier shouts that arrows were fired again and the enemy ran off, and they need to call the border guard. Rem clicks his tongue and flops back onto his bed, saying, what a letdown. Esther is on the floor between the beds, still in shock. As Encred closes his eyes and goes back to sleep, she gets up, eyes glowing with rage, and raises her paws. She starts smacking Encred relentlessly, demanding to sleep in peace, while Encred tries to block the hits, groaning that it hurts. Chryse watches quietly as Esther continues to smack Encred with her paws. His expression shifts to concern. With a worried look, he notes that this is the second raid. The endless repetition of training continues, and in between, those arrows keep hitting their camp. The arrows of the Hawks' talon. Encred says the letter carved on the stone is YA. More arrows fly in, striking down more soldiers. Rem misses the archer again, and mutters that he's a quick bastard. Encred reads another carving on a stone and says, it's man. Another raid passes, claiming even more lives. Encred continues his routine of sleeping with his swords, and Esther is clearly not happy about it. Jackson throws another stone and asks what the letter was. Encred says the letter carved on the stone is IN, and notes that if you piece together all the letters so far, it spells out crazy barbarian. Rem notices this and becomes enraged. He gets ready to attack Jackson, declaring he'll carve him up instead of that hawk bastard. Encred steps in, blocking his path, and turns to Jackson, asking if he realizes he's always the one who starts the fight first. Jackson simply shrugs and walks away. The scene shifts to Chryse, quietly listening in on a conversation between two soldiers. They complain about how slippery the archer is. Not even a hair out of place, no trace left behind. Tracking him down feels impossible. Chryse begins to worry. There are multiple raids each day, yet no progress in catching the culprit. The damage seems small now, but if this continues, it will escalate into something far worse. As he stares at a lifeless body on the ground, frustration builds. He wonders what the high command is doing and why they're failing to address the situation properly. Clicking his tongue, he mutters that he never wanted to step up and risk himself for nothing. But at this point, he doesn't have much of a choice. He walks over to Encred, addressing him as squad leader. Pointing to himself, he says he has an idea and asks if Encred wants to suggest a plan to high command.